And this is Sapphire and Sable. Jaune finished, pointing out each of the women in the room to them. Weiss managed to keep her face calm through the introductions, mentally filing away the names and faces of each. She was used to meeting and memorizing important people at family functions, so this was no issue. The rest of the team, however, poor Blake looked lost, and she'd even met them all the day before, apparently. Yang was wildly looking between the various blondes, eyes wide and mouth agape, while her younger sister almost looked intimidated to be under the scrutiny of so many people. Your family is huge. Yang grinned. Does anyone have any embarrassing stories of Jaune as a kid? I have photos. One of the girls laughed. The tallest with the short hair and the gout of an amateur hunter, Sapphire, Weiss's mind quickly recalled. There was another with her, younger and shorter, yet still wearing an almost maternal smile, Sable, older sister. Aren't you worried about that? Weiss asked, turning to her partner, confronted with so many people she would prefer to stick by him. He looked back at her, shrugging. I don't even remember my life as a child. Few do, I suppose. She sighed. Her memories were still a little clearer, but maybe that was just her. From what she read, particularly happy and sad memories tended to remain for a long time. His family didn't look like either. They looked comfortable, kind, and loving. Oi, Jaune. Two appeared at his side as though by magic, dark clothes, leather and studs as they dragged him away, muttering about some music or other he had to listen to. Had it been anyone else, he might have weaseled his way out of it, much like he had her training. He agreed, however, smiling at them, not with joy, but rather in a way one might to a small child you wanted to indulge. Weren't they his older sisters? Even as she watched him, as the two pushed him into a seat and took their positions on either side of him, something looked wrong with the scene. They remained close to him, one leaning over to push on the scroll as the other forced headphones into his ears. They both smiled as they talked, hands moving dramatically as a tale was recounted. It was a typical family scene, about one more emotional than her own. So why did Jaune's smile and posture bother her so? A gentle hand touched Weiss's shoulder. I didn't expect Jaune to bring so many friends to meet us, the woman behind her said. Weiss turned to look at her, his mother. Juniper smiled down at her, a rather beautiful woman by any standard and one that Weiss felt an immediate respect for. Anyone who could control so many children deserved her respect, more so if they had to raise Jaune for 17 years. This woman deserved a medal. I'm sorry for the intrusion. Weiss bowed her head. We didn't mean to interrupt what was supposed to be a family event. Oh no, I didn't mean anything like that, dear. The woman accepted a glass of some juice from a passing waiter, the rather large group having met in a near-empty bar of the hotel's restaurant. It was a simple venue, certainly not fit for one of her standing, but easy enough on the eyes. It's just a surprise, that's all. Jaune was never one to bring many friends around when he was younger. I can well believe that, Weiss thought. For any other person she might have considered the criticism uncharitable, but for Jaune Arc it was completely deserved. If it hadn't been for him risking his life to protect Blake, then they'd likely have already condemned him by now. And how many opportunities for such were available in a children's school? Weiss could well imagine Jaune being a lonely child, if only because his own attitude pushed people away. But she wasn't going to say that to his mother of all people. Jaune is fairly well respected in Beacon. Weiss lied through her teeth. I wouldn't say he has the most friends, but certainly enough. That's more than I ever imagined. Juniper smiled. Though if you don't mind me saying, you were quite the colourful bunch. Weiss wasn't sure whether she meant physically or mentally with that one, though both could probably fit. She followed the older woman's gaze, spotting Ruby, who looked as shy as ever but was being engaged in conversation by a pale young girl with golden ringlets. Shy and uncertain, she was only just starting to open up, silver eyes occasionally flashing with excitement. Then there was Yang, one arm around Sapphire's shoulder, the other in front of her mouth as she looked at something being shown to her on a scroll. She burst out laughing a second later, apparently already at home with the group of strangers. She had no problem settling in with new people. With her impressive figure, golden hair and bright eyes, she looked just like another one of the Ark family. And of course there's Blake, their final partner, and the most hurried of them all. Weiss pitied her because the rumors she'd been told this family believed, more so because Weiss wasn't sure how to break them. Any rejection would probably be taken by denial on her part, and Weiss was honestly still unsure what was happening. They weren't dating, that much was clear, but Jaune had been willing to risk his life for her. That spoke of some affection. Blake was sat in a seat by the edge of their group, face buried in a book that read, "I'm reading? Don't bother me," pose of hers. The one she used when interaction was the last thing she wanted. Sadly, it looked like someone hadn't gotten the message. Glasses-wearing girl peeking over Blake's hunched shoulders and whispering into her ear. "I suppose you could say we are." Weiss surrendered. "That's not a bad thing. You're my son's partner, are you not?" Weiss nodded to the question. In a way, it was a painful reminder that her own father hadn't once inquired as to her team. "I feel like I should apologize for what he's no doubt put you through. He's been nothing short of a gentleman." Weiss's eye twitched as she said it. She had to be diplomatic, however. That was how she'd been brought up. The woman opposite her let out a long laugh. "You don't need to be so polite with me, my dear. I raised my son. I know what he is like. How about the truth?" "The truth?" Weiss whispered. "You really want to hear the truth about Jaune Arc?" Juniper Arc nodded. Well, if that was how she wanted it. "He's lazy and unmotivated, a complete pervert, completely unwilling to show the slightest bit of energy. He doesn't put effort into any class. He makes a mockery of combat spars and otherwise makes our team look like fools." She knew she should stop, but this was the first person she'd been able to rant over the issue, her having to hide it even from Winter. Weiss threw her arms wide. "Not to mention I have to do just about everything to make sure he even survives the day. I have to wake him up, have a shower, wake him up again because he's fallen back asleep, drag him back to training, force him around the course and keep watch to make sure he even eats breakfast. That's not even including lessons, which he's more likely to fall asleep and then actually pay attention. Sometimes, I don't even know how he made it into Beacon, and then sometimes I'm not even sure how he survived to adulthood." Weiss panted heavily, hands clenched into fists, right before she remembered who she was saying this to. "I am so sorry for that. Jaune's mother was laughing. Not simple, little laughter, but the kind that wrecked her body. One hand across her stomach as she giggled into the other. "I'm sorry," she said after a few seconds, trying to gain control of herself. It's certainly amusing to see someone else standing in my shoes." It took Weiss a few seconds to realize what his mother meant. When she did, she could only sigh. Forcing Jaune to eat, get up and go about his day? She was comparing herself to Weiss. "I have no idea how you put up with him for so long." Weiss sighed. "I've been driven insane from just a few months. You've had him for 17 years. This woman didn't deserve a medal. She deserved a statue in her honor." "Well, he wasn't always like that, of course," she said. Weiss's ears perked up. "What do you mean?" "Never mind, sweetie." Juniper waved one hand as though to dismiss the comment. "I just meant he was different as a young child. People grow up in different ways. Still, I must say that I'm pleased he has someone like you around to look out for him. I'm not sure the sentiment is mutual on his part." "I'm sure it isn't." The woman smiled over Weiss's head, no doubt looking towards him. "But at the same time, I dread to imagine what might have happened had he been partnered with someone who didn't care so much about him." Weiss wanted to say that she was clearly reading into things, but held off. "Thank you for looking after my son, sweetie." Weiss sighed. I guess he's not completely useless. Oh? She sounded curious, but the little smile on the woman's face made Weiss want to fidget. Having come this far, however, she wasn't about to back down. Jaune was a pain in her rear, a nightmare to put up with and otherwise a blight on their team's reputation. But, despite everything he does wrong, he's not a bad teammate, nor is he a bad partner. He can be frustrating at times, yes, lazy and unmotivated too, but he does care about the team. Weiss glanced away, first to Yang, recalling that time in Forever Falls, and then back to Blake. It took us a long time to realize that, but he's dependable, so as long as you don't actually depend on him for anything. Some would say that doesn't make sense, sweetie. His mother quipped. Weiss could only lift one shoulder in a vague shrug. It didn't make sense, but that was how it felt. If they were ever in danger, she felt he would be there to help them. But if they were relying on him for anything short of that, then they'd best start digging their own graves. In a small way, I think I do understand. Thank you, Miss Schnee. You're very kind. I'm not, Weiss said. And call me Weiss, please. It didn't feel right to make her partner's mother call her such an impersonal title. Then thank you, Weiss, Juniper said with a little smile. You've given me a lot to think about. Have I? Weiss wondered, shaking her head with a little sigh. It was probably better not knowing, especially with what had happened to Blake. The Faunus was still being hunted on the outskirts of their not-so-little group, looking increasingly haggard at what was probably some of very probing questions as to the nature of their relationship. I'll have to do something to save her from that. It should have been the team leader's job, but naturally, that went back into the whole dependability thing. I said he's like a brother to me. Ruby's sudden shout almost made Weiss jump, and did make most of the others turn to look at her. The 15-year-old huntress was squaring off against Jaune's youngest, who despite her age was as tall as Ruby. And me, Weiss's treacherous mind pointed out. The worst part was that she was developing more than Weiss was too. There was no justice. Well, he's not. The younger girl shoved Ruby, nearly knocking the hooded girl off her seat. Amber, the only other man at the table rebuked, catching Ruby with an almost effortless grace. Ruby didn't even have the time to balk before she was caught, righted and sat back down again. She just blinked a bit in confusion. Why, I suppose the man with so many children would be used to catching them. Or maybe that was just how good a hunter he was. Amber, say sorry to Jaune's friend. Sorry, Jaune's friend. The young girl gave an apology that fell just short of acidic. She then mumbled something under her breath, though apparently Ruby had caught it. She reared up in her seat. I'm not! She gasped. Take that back. Why? You're just a stupid hunter. Yeah? Ruby huffed. Well, at least I'm not an immature little child like you. Amber Ark looked Ruby up and down before raising an eyebrow. Could have fooled me. Okay. Yang laughed, appearing behind Ruby just in time to catch her by the hood before she could do anything rash. You should come over and sit with me, sis. Saf has the cutest photos. And you? Juniper Ark smiled as she held her youngest daughter's wrist in one hand. Need to have a bit of a time out, dear daughter. Why don't you come and sit with your mother and father? I don't. Weiss watched in awe as the girl quickly paled and went silent. Okay, good girl. I need to learn how to do that. Weiss realized as she watched the mother sit her daughter down between herself and the handsome man that was Jaune's father. Was there any skill a mother could learn? Or could it be taught? Jaune's family certainly was interesting, in a dysfunctional yet comfortable sort of way. It had all the hallmarks of what it was, a place where people of the Ark name belonged. A quick glance towards him showed that while he had paid attention to Ruby's outburst, Jaune was still content to sit with his two sisters. They continued to dominate that conversation, talking to each other and him so quickly that he appeared unable to get a word in. But he continued to smile. Not in a pleasure or happiness, but rather the smile of a man who was finally able to relax. Weiss just wasn't sure why that bothered her so much. "Thanks for doing this, Weiss," Blake repeated for what had to be the 5th time. Weiss accepted it with her usual grace, knowing that it was only because of how relieved the girl really was. "It's fine, Blake. A room didn't cost much, and to be honest, it's somehow a little comfier than the hotel I was staying at." Perhaps that was something to do with her time at Beacon. She was so used to sharing a small room with 3 others, that the impressive rooms afforded to her seemed cold and lonely. Hence her decision to stay at this hotel with Blake, the 2 of them having a bed each in the new room. She wouldn't admit that, however. "Aww, Weiss is so sweet." Yang instantly killed the mood. As usual. "I'd be quiet if I were you, Xiaolong." Weiss snapped. "You live in Patch. Why am I buying you and your sister a room anyway? Because it's too late and too far to make the journey?" Yang shrugged, not that she was really sorry. "Because I can't afford one? Because you were guilt-tripped into it by Ruby?" Weiss growled. "Thank you, Weiss." The younger girl took her by the hands. "We're really grateful you're willing to do this for us. If there's any way we can help you out when we're back at Beacon, just let me know." She was so earnest, so utterly sincere that Weiss could only sigh. "It's fine, Ruby. You don't have to do that." "Really?" Yang grinned. "Real generous of you, Weiss Cream. Cheers." The mattress gave way beneath her as she sat down, stretching her arms slightly to work out the kinks. So, here they were, their holiday away from Beacon, and against all odds, they had found themselves together once more. Weiss should have hated that. She'd been thrilled to have some time alone, some peace and quiet. So why hadn't she fought against this in the slightest? His family is pretty cool. Yang grinned as she sat down on Blake's new bed, earning a quick glare from the frazzled Faunus lying there. "His family is a nightmare," Blake said. "I'm not sure how many times I've told them that we are not in a relationship. They either look at me like I'm too embarrassed to admit it, or as though I'm one of his casual lays." "Well, he did risk his life to save yours," Yang pointed out. "Maybe you're not right now, but that does seem a little too much for just friends." "You did the same afterwards," Blake replied. "Unless there's something you want to tell me, I take it we can assume you can save someone without asking for their hand in marriage." Yang's grin turned evil for a second before Blake sighed. "Please don't. I've had enough of his family without you pretending to fancy me too." "Ah, you're no fun." "John's family is really nice," Ruby whispered. "Mostly, anyway. It makes me wonder why he's so quiet and withdrawn, though." "You noticed that as well?" Weiss asked, impressed. Sometimes the younger girl seemed so foolish, but every now and then she showed signs of being the leader she was. It does seem unusual, especially with how inclusive they are with him. "I'd say protective." Yang frowned. "Or did you not notice how they split us up and made sure to talk to us all individually?" Weiss's head snapped up. Had they done that? There were certainly enough of them, but why would they? She recalled Juniper finding her alone, of talking about Jaune and what she thought about him. At the time she crossed it off as maternal interest, or maybe it still was, but of the protective kind. Why would Juniper Arc be worried for her son, though? "I was trying to grill them for stuff about Jaune," Yang shamelessly admitted. "But they grilled me back just as hard. I got the feeling his 2 older sisters were really worried about him, especially about how he was settling in." "Older sisters are always worried," Weiss said. "Even Winter was the same, except much more reserved about it. It wasn't what she did or didn't say, but how many messages Weiss received, at least one every 3 or 4 days unless her sister was on a mission somewhere. This felt different. Yang leaned back on the bed, taking even more of Blake's space. Trust me when I say I know a bit about being a worried older sister, but this felt a lot more desperate. They acted like they fully expected him to suffer. Blake filled in, like they did not think he would be safe without them. Exactly! Yang looked towards her partner. Ruby pushed her fingers together while Weiss frowned and crossed her legs. That was quite the thought to have, if it were true at all. Concern was natural, especially among a family like that. But now that Blake had pointed it out, Weiss couldn't shake the image of Jaune relaxing, or of how his sisters pulled him aside and talked not to him, but for him. She thought it merely the way they were, that they were chatterboxes and he was quiet. But was that really the case? Had they talked over him because they had something to say? Or had they done it so that he wouldn't have to, because they knew he didn't want to? Is Jaune okay? Ruby asked, voice meek. I'm sure he's fine, Weiss quickly replied, not wanting to worry the girl. This is just... It seems like he has a much closer relationship with his family than we thought. That's all. Not that there was anything wrong with that. If anything, she admired and respected him for it. But at the same time, there was a nagging doubt nonetheless. He loved his family, and they clearly loved him. But they also closed ranks around him almost immediately. It was like they were trying to protect him. From them. You thinking what I'm thinking? Yang asked. How should I know? Weiss snapped back, suddenly irritable. I'm not a mind reader. Yang ignored her. It looks to me like they were worried about him, and not just because they're family, and that's what families do. It's more like they feel they have a legitimate reason to do so. Like they need to do so. He was very bad at the start of the term, Blake pointed out. He was quiet and withdrawn. Didn't he even snub Ruby? He wasn't being mean. The young girl predictably defended him. He was probably just shy, or tired, or something. Yang frowned. I mean, we all thought he was just being an ass, right? Both of how he acted in general and to us. But if you think about it, there are other reasons for why he might have been acting like that. Maybe he couldn't help it. An illness. The answer came to Weiss's mind immediately, a low sigh escaping her as she closed her eyes. What about how he acts, too? Yang said. Sleeping too much, not having any energy, struggling in class. Sure, you could say he was lazy, but you could also say he was suffering from a mental illness. Weiss finished with a sigh. Depression, perhaps. Not a dangerous or hereditary one. She hurried to add when she saw Ruby's horror, just perhaps one that left him feeling lethargic and irritable, unable to properly function or to talk to people. Me, Ren, and Nora did think something was wrong. Ruby whispered. Ren, Nora, and I, Weiss's mind corrected. She slapped it down. The girl took a deep breath and closed her eyes. A few seconds later, she opened them again, staring at Weiss with a determined expression. How can we help him? She wasn't a doctor, nor a psychiatrist. And yet now they were all looking at her for an answer, even Blake. There might have been that joke about how she was the mother of their team, but was she now their doctor too? Well, I suppose I can try and find some books, maybe purchase some and have them delivered? I think the best thing we can do for now is to try and make sure he knows that we're there for him. We need to make sure he has fun too. Yang grinned. Don't let him laze around because that's just the illness talking. I hear activity is good for people who feel bad. So maybe up his spars. More exercise? I'll tell Nora and Ren too. Ruby promised. Nora's really good at having fun, so she'll be able to come up with some ideas. We need to make sure he doesn't do anything foolish, but he could take risks that others might not. Attacking a dangerous criminal, for instance. Blake said. She was right. Yang and Ruby realized it at the same time Weiss did. The docks. How he acted. How willing he had been to risk his life for Blake's. Not suicide, perhaps, since he fought to live, but something altogether as dangerous. A death wish. Or perhaps more accurately, a lower image of what his life was worth. We'll all make sure he's looked after. We just have to make sure he doesn't do anything stupid and he'll be fine. His whole family has said he'd shown some signs of changing, right? What if we're already helping? She could see them all perking up, especially Yang and Ruby, who looked like they'd finally found a light at the end of the tunnel. Juniper had been pleased. She'd thanked them, maybe for helping her son recover. Just keep doing what we're doing. Weiss continued. Involve him more, show our support, and for the love of dust, make sure he doesn't do anything stupid or dangerous. This was a stupid idea. Dangerous too. People parted on either side of him as he made his way through the streets of downtown Vale, towards what many dubbed the seedier parts of the city. The well-populated and lit areas of the city gave way to neon lights and loud bars. Music emanating from the inside. Commuters becoming revealers, many traveling in small groups as they swayed and laughed drunkenly. One or two women looked at him as he passed, some calling out only for him to ignore them. There wasn't time for that. Neo and Roman were a threat, not just to himself but also his family. With Mercury and Emerald's encounter with him earlier in the day, he was also worried that their actions might escalate. From what he could recall of working with Roman, he'd meet with Cinder on the evening of their hit on Tuscan. Killing the traitor had been Roman's job, one he'd delayed on. That meant Torchwick and Cinder would be meeting tonight, which meant there was also a good chance the two would share information. Would it be about his family? Finding either of them was a bust. Cinder changed her safe houses constantly, and while he did know one or two of hers, and even some of Roman's, it wasn't enough to find either in person. Neither of them had ever revealed to their underlings where they lived. Warehouses and staging grounds were just that, places they might visit or store goods. He was out of luck there. But there was one location that might help. One place that, while it might not let him find Roman, could put him in contact. It was just a shame that the place had every reason to hate him. One of the suited bouncers caught his eye as he pushed his way through the door. Jaune saw him whisper something into a scroll. Well, he hadn't intended to remain hidden. This life was supposed to be a holiday. I swore there wouldn't be any more of these missions. Perhaps the world was arrogant. Missions denoted someone to give them out, but it was what he'd often called excursions he took each repeat, when he would go out and try to prevent something from happening, often by trying to cut it off at the source. This one's different, he thought. This isn't about fixing the world, it's about protecting my family. It's only going to be the one time. Just this one time. The club, as it was known, had apparently been fully rebuilt. The dance floor was a little different, as was the bar. Junior had clearly either invested a little extra, or more likely, claimed far more than Yang and he really damaged. With all the nasty things he got up to, insurance fraud was certainly not unbelievable. Jaune approached the bar, taking a seat on a spare seat as he waited to be served. "Whatever's on the tap," Jaune said, throwing some line down on the side. The man nodded and pocketed it, drawing out a clean glass and slowly filling it. "Send Hay my way as well, will ya?" The man glanced up. The manager doesn't just talk to anybody. It's more than a job's worth to interrupt him if he's busy. Don't worry about it. Jaune took the drink and had a quick sip, smiling over the rim. "I'm sure he'll come down to see me in a minute. Just send him my way." The man blinked, looking at Jaune for a second before shrugging and walking away. He didn't make any move to fetch Junior, but that was fine. Jaune took the time to enjoy the bit of beer he'd been poured. Not his favourite. He preferred cocktails. But he wasn't here to get drunk. A ruckus behind the bar caught his eye a second later. The same bartender from a moment ago now talking to a taller, bearded man. Jaune smiled as he saw the confused employee point towards him, sending the bear of a man stalking down the bar. "You got nerve showing your face here, kid. I think I saw that line in a movie once. Nice to see you, hey?" Funnily enough, the feeling is mutual. The last time you were here, you and that blonde bitch trashed my club. Give me one good reason not to throw you out right now. I'm here for business. Jaune put the glass down and pulled out some line, what little he had left of his own money. "I just wanted to ask you to pass on a message on to a mutual friend. Once you agree, I'll be on my way." "And who?" Junior sighed and leaned against the bar. "Would this mutual friend of ours be? I've got a lot of friends, kid, and not many enemies, so watch yourself." Jaune resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Bravado aside, the real reason Junior didn't have many enemies was because he was an information dealer. Good at what he did, but ultimately considered of more use alive than dead to most of the criminal underground. It was nothing to do with his reputation, no matter how much the man seemed to think so. Jaune pushed a sealed envelope across the counter. "It's for Torchwick." "Torchwick? Really?" As expected, Junior leaned back and crossed his arms. "You mean that famous thief? What makes you think I know that guy? I run a legitimate business here." "I know you do, hey. There's no need for the games. I'm not here on official hunter business or something. Just pass the message on to him and we'll be even." It was nothing more than an explanation that Jaune was uninterested in interfering with Roman, and that incident at the docks had been an unfortunate accident. He doubted Roman would accept that, not fully at least, but it might be enough to have him take Neo off his back. There was a world of difference between being a casual issue Roman wanted removing, and someone dangerous enough to warrant her attention. "Even?" The man laughed. "I think you got a screwed idea on what's even, kid. You attacked my men, trashed my bar and got some very awkward attention aimed at me. None of which was my intent, believe me. Besides, you claimed it all back, and more by the looks of it." "I can claim for damages," Junior growled. "But the loss of reputation? The fact that my customers think a pair of brats beat my best men? How do you think that looks when I try and rent them out? And here I thought you ran a legitimate business, hey?" Jaune said. Junior frowned but didn't refute that statement. No doubt he figured if Jaune already knew this much, that any further hiding would be pointless. "Will you deliver my letter or not?" "Oh, I'll deliver something." The man scowled. "You owe me, kid, and right now I intend to claim." He nodded at someone in the distance. Jaune glanced back over one shoulder, noticing the 20 or so men in suits that had slowly begun to encircle him. They were moving other guests out of the way, while some near the doors were already being herded out. "I'm not exactly filled with money, hey? You don't want to do this. It's going to be a repeat of the last time. It's a risk I'm willing to take, kid." He took a step back, leaving Jaune alone at the bar. "You can deliver your message to Roman personally. I'll bet he'll reimburse me for handing you over to him, especially after what you did to him at the docks." Jaune sighed and downed his drink, slamming the glass back down on the counter. He knew this was a bad idea. Plenty of goons around him, most armed with cleavers and blunted weapons, though there would probably be a few guns mixed in. The odds weren't exactly in his favor, but if he gave in and let himself be taken by Roman, it would be much worse. Roman might leave him alone if he knew Jaune wasn't a threat, but if he was tied up in front of him... There was one thing in trusting someone wasn't a threat, but it was much safer to actually make sure they couldn't be a threat. Come along peacefully and you won't be hurt. A man behind Jaune warned, a lie, naturally, not that it mattered. Hey, you hear me? A hand clamped down onto Jaune's shoulder. I said. He didn't get any further. Jaune grabbed his hand, twisting before dragging forward and slamming the man's face down onto the bar's surface. Red's sunglasses shattered as he pulled the assailant back, kicking out of his seat and throwing the suited man into the crowd. Get him! Junior roared. They rushed him in masses. Jaune blocked the first thrust of a tonfa of the back of his forearm, twisting his hand around the weapon, slamming his other elbow into the man's throat. The figure gargled and let go, Jaune flipping the weapon over in time to block an attack from the other side. Kuroka Morse would have caused a bloodbath, not to mention the time to draw it might have had him overwhelmed. Instead, he used the metal stick like a shorter sword, locking with another who strained to push him back. He howled as Jaune's boot stuck his knee, twisting it at an unnatural angle and sending the man screaming to the floor. If there was any hope of people not noticing now, it was gone as customers fled towards the door. Jaune paid little attention to it, slamming the butt of the stick into a suited man's stomach, before crackling it under his chin as the goon bent over. A blow hit him from behind. With his aura it did little, his return breaking the attacker's wrist, but that only left him open for another two to rain down. Jaune grunted as they struck, ignoring the pain in favor of catching one man's hand and slamming a knee into his stomach. There were too many, and they had him surrounded. Where Yang or Weiss might have been able to clear them all of a single area of attack, he lacked that capability. They weren't a threat individually, and barely were as a group either, but he couldn't defend against everything. Blue eyes widened as he blocked a cleaver, only to wince as another struck caught him beneath the ribs, driving the air from his lungs. He let himself be pushed back, more to create distance than anything else. Even on the way he shattered the jaw of an unlucky opponent, before disarming and knocking out another with a well-placed blow to the temple. Jaune's back struck the bar as his opponents fanned out. At least 6 or so were already down, many groaning and nursing cruelly broken bones. The rest seemed to be picking up their courage to charge him. Not good. Back to the bar. No real options to escape. Still crowds in the entrance. I need better ground. Jaune's free hand slipped down on the bar behind him, a small grin slipping onto his face. The suited goons charged him at last, moving on some unseen signal. Jaune leapt for the first one, feet striking him in the chest before he kicked off and landed on a stool. The top threatened to spin, but he managed to balance it out by shifting his hips, kicking a nearby man in the face and leaping atop the bar. Pint glasses shattered beneath his soles, the spray alone enough to dissuade one figure who held his arms up before his eyes. With their heads now at knee height, they could only attack his lower body, while he had a one-way street to their faces. Jaune hopped to the left, jumping over a sweep at his feet before landing on the tip of a man's cleaver, pinning it beneath him. A quick flick of one's foot was enough to send a glass of alcohol smashing onto his face, the man tumbling back in pain. "It's happening again, Junior," Jaune shouted, though the man had already left. "Call it off, and we can still do this without any more damage." No answer. He was forced to dash across the bar's surface as the gang finally caught up with him. Too many weapons swinging for his knees to dodge. More glass shattered beneath him. Some beer taps knocked aside as he brushed by. Ahead of him, black-suited man clombered up onto the bar, but Jaune simply jumped and landed back on the bar, sliding across spilled drink like a skater across ice. The poor idiot went tumbling as Jaune's 2 feet struck his legs, smashing him clean off the bar while Jaune was struck laying on his back. A club came in for his face, Jaune rolling backwards to block it with his feet, twisting to the side and kicking the man in the face before climbing onto a kneeling position. 2 more men came from the front with cleavers. One struck the back of his arm, the other his knee. He caught both on aura alone, disarming the first by grabbing the cleaver by the blade and pushing the hilt back into the man's face. The second blocked Jaune's first hit, but was unprepared for the bottle of white wine that exploded across his face. There was a lull in the fighting. if only because he viciously cleared all the opponents around him, leaving the remaining 10 or so to pick their way over fallen bodies and shattered glass. Jaune remained crouched atop the bar, stolen cleaver in one hand, the neck of a bottle in the other. "Looks like someone's causing problems, Melanie." A sultry voice crooned. Jaune's eyes flicked behind the bar to where two women stood with arms crossed and coy smiles. The one in white turned to her red-dressed twin. "Sure does, Miltia. I think we should teach this hunk a lesson. Don't you?" Jaune slowly rose to his feet, pushing some broken glass off the surface with one foot. Hefting a cleaver in his right hand, he tossed it aside, ignoring the sound it made as it clattered across the floor. Kuroko slowly whispered as it was drawn. It was amazing how familiar it felt. Not just his sword, but the way he was surrounded by people, the blood rushing through his veins. The music in the club had long since dwindled in his ears, replaced with nothing more than a dull thumping. His own heartbeat. Miltia hummed as she ran a single, long claw before her face. "He's such a serious little one as well, isn't he, Melanie? I like bad boys." The claw flashed red. They cry the hardest. A gunshot came from the door. Jaune ducked instinctively, flicking Kurokomo's back, but the shot passed by overhead, shattering a bottle on the back shelf. Twin impacts told him he'd been distracted, his attention quickly taken by a vicious claw that struck towards his face. Kurokomo's peeled it to the side, metal rasping on metal, but stiletto footsteps from behind told him of the bigger danger. Melanie's kick hit hard, Jaune barely catching it at the last second on his sheath, holding it by the middle so that her bladed heels clicked against the top. Trapped between them on a thin bar surface, he felt a bead of sweat dribble down his head. "You should give up," Melanie teased from behind. She didn't seem all that bothered by the fact that her eye kick atop the bar was giving everyone a free show. Her eyes instead sparkled with malice. "Otherwise we might have to cut that pretty face of yours. It would be a real shame." Give up? Trapped between two competent opponents, already tired and with multiple untrained goons just waiting to bog him down. The odds definitely didn't seem to be in his favor. But give up? Images flashed through his mind. Blake gargling as her throat was slit. Ruby smiling peacefully as the snow turned red around her. Yang holding the enemy back while they tried to escape. Weiss touching the bullet hole in her chest. Ren smiling as the Grim took him, Nora scythed down by a bullhead's fire. Pyrrha transfixed by an arrow atop a tower. They didn't give up. What was that? Miltia cooed, leaning closer. Her amusement turned to shock, however, once his eyes met hers. "Mel," she cried out as Jaune shifted, releasing her attack and letting it through but pushing her into his blade as well. "Mel?" The other screamed, but the moment her twin fell back, Jaune had turned, pushing her back with his sheath and striking down with his blade. She cursed and darted back, kicking up sharply with one foot to parry the naked steel. He chased after her, intent on putting her down before the other could recover from her shock. Melanie dodged back, kicking and spinning as she tried to push him away. But since she had to lose the use of a leg to attack, he kept advancing. Eventually it happened. She swept towards his neck, only to panic and try to fall back at the same time. Her frantic hop back ended with her heel hitting a tap, a startled cry sounding as she fell back. Her body smashed and clicked as she and whatever else she had crushed rolled off the surface. He was about to jump down and finish her off but for a furious scream behind him. "You bastard!" Miltia's face was set in a snarl, the claw striking his sword and almost pushing past to take out his eye. There was a nasty cut across the front of her dress, though it looked like her aura had prevented him from drawing blood or outright killing her. "I'm okay." The other coughed and hacked. Not good. His only advantage was facing them one at a time. Apparently Yang had fought them both, but before setting her aside being stronger physically, she also hadn't had to fight atop a slippery surface where they could attack from front and back simultaneously. They couldn't be allowed to team up once more. Jaune twisted Kurokomore's, the blade between her claws doing the same and forcing her to the side. His fist came round in a wide arc, catching the side of her face with the sheath, before he kicked her away. She dodged his kick, backflipping a few times, though the action across the shard-covered surface made her wince. He was on her a second later, silver streaking through the air as he tried to carve through her shoulder. She deflected it at the last second, the force enough to knock her off balance. Chamber in reverse. He brought Kurokomore's back, hilt first to bury into her sternum. She hacked and coughed as the air was driven from her lungs. "Mill! Above!" The other one screamed as Jaune brought his sword down. Green eyes widened, the girl beneath him managing to dodge at the last second to the side. Wood splintered as the wooden bit down and became lodged. The girl cried out in victory, slashing her claws towards his chest, while he was distracted and defenseless. Jaune grinned. He caught them under his left arm, feeling the metal cut against his ribs before he locked his arm down, pinning her arm to the side. She gasped, only to shout in panic as he turned on the spot, dragging the other girl across his body and off her feet. Jaune finally pulled a full 360 degree, at which point she was completely off balance and stuck following him. His eyes saw her eyes widen as she saw Kurokomore's once more, its point buried into the bar. Off balance and completely under his control, he slammed her face down into the pommel. Once, twice, thrice. She stopped moving on the third, but he stopped and looped an arm around and under her own, threw her bodily into the drinks display at the back of the bar. She crashed into it, smashing aside bottles left and right as she slid into the workstation. She slumped unconscious among the glass and booze. "What are you waiting for? Shoot him! Kill him!" The remaining sister screamed. Her goons were nothing if not good at following orders. Handguns, rifles and shotguns were all aimed in his direction, all exploding in a canopy of sounds. Jaune pulled Kurokomore's back, holding the sheath he still held in one hand out. It fanned out quickly, the familiar shield taking form once more to block the shots. He didn't use it much anymore. What use was a shield when you couldn't defend those you loved? It still occasionally served its purpose, however. The impact struck against it, forcing him back for a moment, but this time he allowed it. His feet struck the floor behind the bar a second later, he ducking behind it quickly. Junior was just paranoid enough to have enough metal to block bullets in his bar, as proven by the sounds they made pinging off the other side. He waited just long enough for the noise to stop, echoed by Melanie throwing insults at them for nearly hitting her sister. This distraction was his chance. Weapons clicked back into place as he leapt back over the bar, but he threw his shield down below him, landing on it and sliding across the alcohol-soaked floor. Dust rounds passed overhead, but he was on them in a matter of seconds, kicking off his shield so that it slammed into the chest of one before he swung. He didn't even have the time to see what damage he'd done before he was already ducking another and driving the blade into the stomach of a third. To lose was to die. To win was to live. But that wasn't fully the case, was it? If he beat them, no. When he beat them, he'd still be back where he started, no closer to Roman or Neo. I need that message delivered, no matter what the cost. It was just like how he normally did things. An objective, a goal, and those who dared stand between them. A cold feeling settled over him, eyes narrowing as his mind snapped back onto focus. The task, the objective, he needed an opening. And in Melanie's frightened eyes, he found it. Her foot came up to block his strike, the girl kicking back off his arms as she tried to escape. But Jaune cut his way through the red and black dressed man that was put between them. "A little help?" she shouted as he thrust towards her. The edges of her boots were lined with steel, just enough to make Kurokomore spark as she parried. An elbow struck his face, but he ignored it, spitting past the pain as he drove into her guard, never once letting up the pressure as she was forced back. Until she had nowhere else to go. Her eyes widened the moment her back hit the wall. He could see the panic in them, the fear and realization. In desperation, she reached out to catch the sword as he thrust it into her stomach. Eyes clenched shut as she screamed, "Junior!" Jaune roared, voice loud over the silence left behind by Melanie's howl. No one dared to move. Not the goon to remain standing, frightened as they were, nor those injured and bleeding on the floor. Jaune's breath was heavy, angry pants coming from his lips. "I know you're watching, Junior. Get out here." At the back of the club, behind a panel of what Jaune had to assume was some kind of dust-proof glass, Junior stood. The man looked angry, but also worried. "This didn't have to happen, Junior." Jaune seethed, gesturing to the bodies across the floor. Many were unconscious, but some weren't as lucky. Blood stained the floor. It had been unavoidable. Jaune turned back to Melanie, whose wide eyes bore into his own, rimmed with tears. His hand was clenched over her mouth, drowning out the muffled sound she was making. The tip of Croquemort's bit into her stomach, enough to cause pain but not to pierce her skin. "Do you want me to add her to the list? What do you want?" Junior growled. What did he want? What did he want? Jaune could have laughed. Would have, were it not for the adrenaline rushing through him. That and the anger. The sheer rage. A message, Junior. That was all I ever wanted from you. All of this. Every bit of this. You brought upon yourself. And this time he wouldn't have an out either. There was no claiming Jaune had started this, not before the carnage involved. Not to mention the witnesses. Junior wouldn't even be able to report it to the authorities, not unless he wanted them arresting him for attempted murder. This time, Jaune was free to do whatever he had to do. Deliver my message. Deliver it, and then never think of interfering with me again. Understood? I'll deliver your message. The man spat. He looked at Jaune with hate, with the seeming anger of a man already plotting vengeance. Not good enough. Melanie's screams were choked off as he leaned on the blade, driving it slowly into her. The woman's aura flared, preventing the damage at first but doing little for the pain. It couldn't hold. Her hands flayed at the one holding her mouth, before falling to the sword when she couldn't dislodge his grip. There were tears in her eyes as she struggled to push the blade aside. Her legs kicked against his, but she was suspended from the floor. Even his hand over her mouth couldn't prevent the muffled scream as her aura finally gave way. Stop, stop. I'll do it. I give up. I'll do it. Jaune pulled back, drawing the blade out of her. It made a soft noise as it slid free. There was already blood pooling on her white dress, but she would live provided she got medical attention. Junior was at the window now, both hands pressed against the glass. Whatever you want, it's yours. Just don't come back here, and you'll never have to see me again. I'll deliver your fucking message. I'm glad we could do business, Junior. Jaune sighed, letting the girl go. She slumped to the ground, still leaning against the wall but falling onto her rear, hands clenched to her wound. She looked up at him with such hatred, such fear. Oh, and Junior, if you ever make a move against me or mine, he warned, if I even think that you have. We won't, Junior promised. The bearded man's eyes looked over his men and the two defeated girls. What use would it even be? Jaune nodded. No use at all. He could do this again if he had to. In fact, it would only be worse since he could plan it all in advance. Melanie's eyes fell to the floor as he stepped past her, glass clinking beneath his soles. She was shaking, mascara running down her cheeks as her frame was wrecked with frightened sobs. This is just the one time, he wanted to say to her. I didn't want to do this. I just wanted a life to myself. A life where this wouldn't be necessary. That wouldn't comfort her, however. nor would it comfort those that lay dead upon the floor, or the people they'd left behind. The fact had never bothered him before. Was it the time he spent with his family that now made this scene feel nauseous? Jaune swallowed loudly, turning his head and striding away. He felt exhausted, drained. The bouncer at the door didn't dare to breathe as Jaune pushed by, only moving to slowly shut the door behind him. Jaune's hand fell to his side, feeling the blood pooling beneath his left arm. Mill's claw had struck him there when he'd caught it. Odd. He hadn't thought it strong enough to pierce his aura. Certainly not enough to draw blood. The wound would be gone come morning anyway. His family and friends need never know.